Welcome to another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast here from the Snowdon Deli. I'm Aaron Rand from CJD, along with Bill Brownstein of the Montreal Gazette. And our guest today is someone you probably don't know, although you probably have heard this story over the last little while. Doug Dixon is here. Doug, thank you for being here. We're not talking hockey.
Nope.
We're not talking politics.
Okay.
We're
Kind of
talking one
politics.
the weirdest cases that I can remember ever hearing about immigration, the U.S., ICE, all stuff that's been in the news, but typically not dealing with Canadians. You, however, you break that mold. So I guess the easiest thing to do is to start. I'll just give a little bit of background and then pick up your story. So you're originally from Montreal, right? You decide to 20 some odd years ago, 15, 20 years ago, pick up and leave to move to Florida.
Correct.
Because, well, you said because of the weather, which a lot of Canadians decide to do. You decide to move, you open up a business. Let's pick it up from there. And what happens?
Okay, so I had a tropical smoothie cafe in order to obtain my visa legally, and I ran that for about 7 years until COVID hit.
Well, I'm gonna stop you. You get a green card. You did everything by the books to go to
absolutely.
the U.S., right?
Everything right. That's what I was going to tell you. I took the tropical smoothie to be able to buy the time through the visa for my daughter to be able to sponsor us. And once you have your sponsor, then you can get your green card.
Okay.
So then I got the green card. My wife and I got our green cards in 2019. So that I had been there since 2013 with the store on a regular B2 or E2 visa. So once we had our legal permanent residence in 2019, we were golden for 10 years. The business was experiencing some trouble. So some of the checks were going through, some weren't. And over that period of 7 years, I guess the government flagged it and said, you owe us X number of dollars in taxes. So I went to their office, made a deal with them. This was probably in 2017, I believe. And I said, I'm going to pay you back, but I can't pay you back. The store is not doing well. So they said, okay, pay us over time. You'll catch up, and then we're done.
How much money we talk about?
With penalties, interest, and collection fees, it was about $32,000.
That you owe the U.S. government
That I owed
in back taxes.
Right, the state of Florida.
Okay.
And then came COVID, which is the killer.
COVID was the killer because that shut the
Right.
store down. You could not. So that, because I had the agreement already with them to pay them back, I lost that ability once
Right.
the store closed.
Right.
So for them, that became the default.
And you were still in a process of paying back. You paid back almost all your what you owed, except for about $12,000,
That's
as I
where I stand
understand.
today. That's where I
Correct.
stand today. Correct.
Well, I want to just clarify. So
Yeah.
wait, while you were in business before
Right.
COVID,
Right.
business was not going great.
Right.
You owed taxes.
Right.
Made the deal then
Right.
before COVID.
Right. And
Then
it was-
COVID hits and now you have nothing because you're in a mall
Right.
and the mall is closed.
Right. So I
Right.
couldn't repay that, and that's how the warrant got issued,
Okay.
because they said you have defaulted on your agreement. Well, yeah. And then I didn't know that warrant was issued, and I was accessible everywhere. They have my address, they have everything. As I was door dashing, because that's how I was making some extra money. They stopped me in 2022. I went through an American stop at a McDonald's.
A rolling stop.
A rolling stop,
Uh-huh.
exactly. And that's
So wait, so you get stopped for a traffic violation.
right.
The cops pull you over.
Right.
And they see an outstanding
Whatever,
warrant.
And what happens? They find you have the
They
warrant.
find I have the warrant.
And the
so-
warrant is for unpaid taxes,
It is, yeah.
which you did not know that you had against you.
I didn't know I had the warrant against me. I knew that the
You
taxes
still
were
owe the
still,
money.
but
Okay.
I didn't know I had the warrant out for it.
And you still thought you had a deal in place to pay back.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden, everything turns upside
Everything
down.
turns out, because now I'm going to court before the judge. So now the judge says, I'm going to give you a break. I'm going to allow you. I'm not going to adjudicate the file, leave it open, because he knew I was traveling back and forth from Montreal to Florida. And I won't adjudicate. You could take this file once you're all paid off, and you can have it sealed or expunged, and it's not going to carry into your later time. So I said, okay, that's fine. So I make the deal, and then I'm surprised because they send me to a probation situation. I didn't know that probation was included with this deal, but apparently
So up
we had-
until then, there'd been nothing. You never had to see a probation officer or
No.
anything else.
nothing. Only then after the adjudication, I
Okay.
took a public defender because I had no money, and the public defender basically made the deal. And he says, sign here. So I So
Yep.
he's a professional. He knows what he's doing. I signed there. I did that. That's how I ended up. Like, it's hard to explain, because when you don't know something in a profession and you're relying on somebody to give you the proper information and they just don't, or they've been negligent
Yeah.
to tell you, you're not thinking anything of it. Like, you're not imagining, oh, well, what's this and what's that? I didn't know that the probation was part of it, but I'm sure my probation and my lawyer knew, but he didn't say anything. He was a public defender.
So when you signed this document, you thought what?
I just thought that I was going to pay back the money. The judge says, here, I'm going to give you 5 years to pay it back. And I told him the amount that I would get, which was $425 a month. I said, I can afford that.
Yeah.
It'll go fine. Even if I run into trouble, I'll be okay with that kind of a payment. He says, okay, fine. And that's how I left the courtroom. But as I left the courtroom, that's what I said. That's when it's, no, you're not going home. You're going to the probation office. This is a felony. So you have to, do your probation. So
And then life took a turn like you could ever have possibly imagined.
Although, as I understand it, even with the now having to see a probation officer,
Right.
that was going pretty normally for a while too.
absolutely fine. That's what I said. For 3 years, I've been seeing him monthly.
Yeah.
I go in for 5 minutes, maybe. He says, you making your payments? Let me check. He goes on his computer. Yeah, your payments are up to date. Okay, off you go. So I'm in 5 minutes. He wants to know about how Canada's doing, but that's it. I'm out. And this last time, I had an appointment for Tuesday, the 17th of February. He calls me and he says, can you come in on the 10th? I said, well, absolutely. I said, there's no problem for that. So he says, okay, I'll see you on the 10th. Well, I go in on the 10th, and normally he's about 15, 20 minutes late coming out to see me. And this time it was 8:25, and he comes out and he says, oh, come on, you can come on in. So he said, okay. I found it weird, but he doesn't have anything going. So I walk in, I start heading towards his office. And as I get close to his office, I'm going to turn in his door. He said, no. The girl behind me, she said, you keep going. We're taking you for a drug test. I said, okay, no problem. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do drugs.
First time ever that's happened.
Right, exactly. So I keep walking about, she says, the drug test is down there. So I keep walking. So they kept walking about 20, 30 feet down. I turn right, and that's when my whole life turned upside down.
And then you discover, you take a right turn and they tell you what?
They don't tell you anything. They're yelling now. Up against the wall. This is ice. They grab you. They throw you. Put your hand out. Spread your legs. Turn your phone off. And I'm shaking like a leaf. I don't know how to turn my phone off. Your brain's going, all over the place. So anyway, they do you the search and everything. And once they take all my stuff from me and put it aside, I finally figure out how to turn off my phone because my mind's calming down a little bit. I said, like, what's going on? They won't tell you a thing. That's
So
right. They
your answer to what's going on, what's happening here, because none of this has ever happened before.
It's like,
is that
nothing. Yeah, they're telling you what's going on.
And from there, they take you where?
Well, from there, they take us to a processing center up in Fort Myers.
Right.
And there, they sit you down and they fill out all your details. Like they were trying, it seemed like they were trying to get me to say that I was only there for less than 5 years when I committed the infraction. But that wasn't true. I'm not sure if they did that because in the law, any infraction committed within the first 5 years of your green card is a problem. Like, that's not good for immigration. So I don't know if that's what they were trying to do, but we had been there since 2013 legally. And like I said, they were, I think, trying to pin something on me as much stuff on me as they could. So as I'm sitting there and they're filling out all the information, I was telling them how I got my green card and how I've been here legally since, 2005 originally, but we changed statuses and everything. And they really don't want to tell you anything. And he said, he looks at my file, he says, don't worry about it. He says, this is so minor. He says, you're going to be 2 or 3 days.
Who's saying this? The ICE agent?
The ICE agent, yeah. And now that I look back, the reason they tell people that, I'm sure, is to keep their anxiety level down, they keep them calm, because you're basically with the ICE agents and you're in a processing center.
And you have no idea what's going on while you're there.
No, not yet.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, when you first get pulled over for that drug test,
yeah,
and you're put in that room,
right,
you all of a sudden you discover it's not just you.
Oh no, there was like 15. There were 16 of us at the end of their whole operation. 16 of us went.
In a similar situation, or people, immigrants from?
It could, yes, it could be for anything. One gentleman had a DUI. One gentleman, it was in his paperwork, was being, in process, but
Okay.
it's not completed. Like, I understand that you're there. Some of these people are there illegally by the law, but they're not illegal criminals that are there.
Not hardened
It's
criminals.
not hardened criminals.
Right.
And that's the impression that everybody was getting, that ICE was targeting.
Were you the only Canadian in this group?
I certainly was, absolutely. Yeah, I was the only Canadian, I think, in my whole travels. I was the only Canadian through the detention center.
Okay.
And out.
So now you're in process.
Yeah.
So I'm
in
still trying to
process.
find out what's going
What's
on.
going on? They don't tell you where you're going, how long you're going to be there, nothing. They just said, this is the processing part. So about 3:00, I could finally make a phone call. And I called my daughter and I said, Amy, I can't get a hold of anybody because they weren't answering the phone. I said, I've been arrested by ICE. Let my immigration lawyer know. So I don't know when I'm going to be able to talk to you again, because once that phone call's over, I don't know when I'm going to have another opportunity. So she says, okay, Dad. Now she's panicking. She's calling all the family, letting them know. Well, we leave that facility around 6:00. But they don't tell you where they're taking you. They
Just 10 hours later from your 8 o'clock.
from the 8:00 point. Exactly. They don't tell you where you're going. So we left there in a van that you couldn't see outside, and we're all shackled. Like, they don't let you.
You're shackled.
You're shackled always. That anytime they're moving you, you're in handcuffs and leg cuffs. So we get in there. They drive us to this place. They open the door and they say, out you get. And as we get out, everybody look. Oh my gosh, we're in Alcatraz. I'm saying, real, like the Alligator Alcatraz? Like, I couldn't really believe that that's where they took us.
You knew what that was. You knew the whole alligator.
Yeah, because we had seen it on
whatever.
TV.
Okay.
There were,
Right.
there were a lot of people that
Did
had
processing center.
So
Detention center.
it's a
so
detention.
so Doug, this was when? What date was that when you were sent to
That was
Alligator?
the 10th. That was the 10th of February.
Right.
And so now we're there. Now they have to process us when you get to Alligator Alcatraz again. So off come your clothes. Like, we had just our regular clothes on to get to there. And then once you get there, now you're under their, orange jumpsuit, their flip-flops and everything. So that processing, and when you get in there, it's like 60 degrees maybe in this kind of like big long hall tent. And they got different stations. One is where you get some change. The next one is for your belongings, so that you sign for everything that you brought in. And then the next station, they take your pulse, they take your heart. They ask you if you have any medical situations, any medications you're taking. And so by the time we were done that, it was like 2:00 in the morning. And you're frozen, right? Because now you're just in this little orange thing, and the air conditioning's blowing on you. And they don't give a rat's,
Yeah.
And then they're all dressed with toques and, the parkas and everything to stay warm, while the rest of us, and now you're counting, they're bringing in the people. So we've had to been about maybe 30 people by the time we got finished processing. You could look down the line and count maybe about 30 orange jumpsuits. And they bring us from that point at about 2 a.m. into, we called it the cage. That's what it was. You were brought into this holding facility that had 8 different cages with 32 people in each cage. And as they bring people out, they bring others in. So if I'm like, when I eventually got transferred out of there, our spots that they had open, well, they just bring in new.
How would you describe that cage?
Inhumane is what I would.
How so?
In terms of the cleanliness, it was like dirty. They don't, the blanket fur, the dust, the paper that, from the toilet paper and stuff, because people don't have any other things in there, but that's what they do have. So that they have Bibles that they're trying to write things on, and the toilets, it was like urine they're out in the open at the back of the cage. And if you're on the top bunk, you can see right into the urinatism of people. And if you had to go to the bathroom, as the guards are walking by, nobody wants to be sitting on a toilet and having so you'd have to put up the water jug. They had like the Home Depot orange water jug. You'd put that up with your with the toilet, with the basket, with a waste basket, and that's your privacy, so to speak. But on either side, people are coming to go pee, and the wall's like only about as high as your waist.
The Corner Booth podcast is brought to you in part by the Snowdon Delicatessen, where we are. 75 years in business, the home of Montreal's greatest smoked meat, plus carnotzel, potato latkes, and the famous Snowdon Deli party sandwiches. That's the Snowdon Delicatessen. But I want to point out again, so for this entire time, your day,
Right.
from showing up at 8 in the morning, being thrown up against the wall,
Yep.
getting into the orange, the next thing you know, you're in Alligator Alcatraz,
Right.
and you still have absolutely no idea what's going on.
Right. They tell you that you're arrested. I mean,
And that's
you're being detained, and that's it. They don't want to answer any questions that you ask them. They'll defer it, where are we? Where are we going? They will not tell you where you're going or where you are.
Now, you said you called your daughter at some point. I should
Right.
point out you told an interesting story, which was they take your phone
Right.
when you first got arrested. So you're calling somebody from a phone that they don't necessarily recognize, right? It's not your number, it's ICE's number,
Correct.
which obviously makes it difficult for someone who decides not to answer the phone from an unidentified number.
Right. That's exactly what happened. That's why the first 3 calls I made, my wife didn't answer, my son, my other daughter didn't answer. And then I finally tried my daughter, Amy, who I guess she must have just said, I'm going to answer. And I got
Did you try to get a hold of your lawyer?
No, because you don't have a number. So if you don't have their number, I don't have my phone. Like today, we don't recognize
Right,
people's numbers.
right.
So I couldn't call him. And it's not like, hey, can you give me my lawyer's number? They're not
not there
very
to help
new. They're not going to help you at all.
So you're in Alligator Alcatraz, you're there for how long?
I was there for 9 days. And you don't know. Like I could have been there longer. I could have been there shorter because all they do is on your day that they plan to move you, they come to your cage, they yell your name, and they take you out. And then you say, well, I guess I'm going somewhere. And they've got a blue jumpsuit now. It's kind of like a smock, but it's a 2-piece. And like I go to the doctor's office, they give you so you put that on. They transfer you to another empty cage with the other people that they're taking out for that day. So I think we were like 7 or 8 people that they pulled out of the different cages that day. And we sat in there from, I think it was 10 in the morning till 6 at night. And you just
waited.
You just wait. And where are we going? We don't know.
And you still don't know what you've done theoretically, other than
I mean, you knew that you did something. Like I made the connection that it's got to do with, taxes.
Yeah.
Well, the probation more than the tax. Like I wasn't thinking, oh, geez, this is a tax issue. I was thinking more, well, you're on probation. They got you for some kind of felony. That's what they're looking for.
But up until then, the only thing they got you for, as you described it, was running a stop sign?
That's what started it all. Yeah.
Okay.
But the warrant was out. So, I mean,
And the warrant was specifically tied to
to the
tax.
tax.
Okay.
Right.
so
By
they
the way, you should point out you were wearing a bracelet all this time, right? What do they do?
Oh, when you're in there, they give you a plastic colored bracelet, and there were 4 colors. There was blue, yellow, orange, and red. Red, you knew you were going back to your country. You weren't don't bother wasting time. Someday you're going back. The orange, you had a chance, but you may have to be there for a long time. You really have to fight it. Yellow, yeah, you got it. You're going to get a bond. You may get out, you'll go back, but you'll fight your case outside the system. And blue was, you're really going to be good. Everybody that's got the blue band, they get shipped to Chrome, which is a place in Miami, and that's a more federally run situation. So it's
How did you find all that out?
So what did you have?
I had a yellow. And how did I find that out? Just through the talking to the other Eagles.
Okay.
And that's what I'm trying to get across to people is that those that are in there are not people that are hardened criminals that I experienced. And I experienced like a few hundred people through the time that I was there. They're not hardened criminals. They're not dangerous. They're not, there was no fights. If there was an argument, people would tone it down.
What were they there for largely? For being illegally?
Illegally in the United States, or if you were in the United States legally and had a DUI or you had a theft or you had something that ICE could tie into their immigration policy.
So you get moved out of Alligator Alcatraz. You're there 9 days.
Mm-hmm.
And you describe it to hell.
As hell, yes.
As hell.
Where you're going.
Right.
What happens next?
So they sit you in that room, then they just shackle you up when it's time. They shackle you up, say, okay, we're moving, and they stick you on another transport vehicle. They don't tell you where you're going, whether you're going to Miami Chrome, whether you're going to this Glades detention. You don't know if you're heading out to Tennessee. They're putting you on a plane. Like, you don't know nothing, and they won't tell you. So you sit on that thing where I think we were on it for about 2.5 hours to get to the Glades Detention Center from Alcatraz. And once you get out, now they got to accept you in and process you again. So I forget, by the time we got out of that, we arrived there around 10 p.m., I would think. By the time it was like 3 in the morning before we actually got into the dorm. And the dorm was more humane because it was larger, it had a proper bathrooms and stuff. So, and the bunks were like individual cells. There were 6 people in a cell. So it was more, I guess you could say, humane, but it was still not something that you would want to put any of your family members through.
Okay.
So you're in there.
For how long are you there now?
There, I was there for 53 days.
Wow.
Now, and you're trying to fight your case, but it becomes pointless. They really, really are not going to give you any opportunity.
When you say you're trying to fight your case, had you had a chance to speak to your public defender?
By then, my wife and daughter had contacted the public defender, and yes, I think the 4th or 5th day, I was able to speak to them from Alcatraz and tell them what was done.
And what did they tell you?
They said, Doug, I'm looking at the immigration thing, and it's over 10,000, and your chances were probably 0, but we can try.
Your chances of what are probably
Of not being deported.
But
Because it's because of the immigration law.
yeah. So mention this $10,000 because that's actually a defining.
That's the key. That
Right,
is
that's
the
it. What
defining.
does that mean?
So if you have a felony or a tax or a money issue, and it goes over $10,000, for immigration purposes, that becomes an aggravated felony. And once you have an aggravated felony, I mean, there are other aggravated felonies, obviously, but once you have an aggravated felony for immigration purposes, you are deported.
Right.
That's it. There's no winner.
And at this point, you still owe the government how much money?
10,000.
12,000.
12,000.
You're just a little over.
I'm just a little over.
And had
But
no
no,
idea.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But in the interim, Doug, as I understand,
Hold on. Finish that thought.
So it wouldn't have mattered if I owed them $1.
right.
It's the charge. I was charged.
Okay.
It doesn't matter whether you're guilty, whether you're innocent. It's the charge. If you've been charged for immigration purposes, that is
That's it. But in the interim, Doug, as I understand it, you've got some friends down there. You play in a hockey league down there,
Yep.
and they're also saying, "Hey, we're going to put up the money and we'll pay it off,"
Yep.
and they're not interested whatsoever.
They're vouching for your character.
And they're, they're vouching for you, your character as a
letters,
business
everything.
person, everything. Didn't do anything
No,
good.
the judge, I don't even think the judge read those letters, to be quite honest with you, because we did try to see if we could get a bond. Like the lawyer says, we can try. You don't know but he says, I don't think it's going to happen. The way the judge responded to our situation, it was like my lawyer said, it was like he took Chat GPT and just said, give me a ruling kind of thing. And that's the response that he got. So we were denied the bond. We were denied the dismissal. We had no relief, in legal terms, there was no relief being issued to me. So it was now just wait until you go see the judge again, which was like 3 weeks later on April, or I think, I forget what month we are now. Yeah, April. So April 3rd, it was just to go and listen to him to say, I'm issuing a final order for deportation. So you had to wait. I had to wait that 3 weeks to get that.
And so then you land back in Montreal, where you haven't been and lived
Yeah, I
25
haven't lived
years.
for 21 years.
Yeah, 21 years.
Yes, sir.
Your family, your wife and kids are all down in Florida.
Correct.
You're up here. You've got no recourse. You like
Can I just go back a sec? The idea of the judge in the part where just before the deportation order
Right.
comes through, are you physically? What are you on Zoom?
You're on Zoom. You're on Zoom X meeting or whatever they call it. So yeah, you're their lawyer, the government's lawyer. There's your lawyer and the judge.
So now your lawyer is still the public defender, or is this
No,
a different?
no.
It's not differently.
Now the lawyer that I have now is my immigration lawyer. If you need an immigration lawyer to fight immigration
Okay.
issues, so he kind of knew by reading the 10,000 that we're not going to beat the federal government when it says that 10,000's the cutoff. Here, what are you going to argue?
And was the mistake along the way here this choice of a public defender? I think you had mentioned once about contesting or pleading. Or, there was an issue there. What should have happened?
If I would have taken a good lawyer, they would have recognized that this was going to be a potential immigration issue. I had a green card, so they would have negotiated. They would have dropped the amount owed. If it was $9,999, I wouldn't be sitting.
Right.
So they know that. So a real attorney would have fought for that kind of a negotiation settlement. Well,
Never happened.
and that never happened because
Wow.
public defenders, they just want to process as many cases
As they
you
can.
can.
So what's interesting, like your family's there, you come here, you've got nothing.
Right.
I'm even amazed that they didn't try to deport the rest of your family in the midst of all of this.
Gosh, Bill, don't say that.
No, but like, I mean, I'm just
I
saying.
don't. Yeah, you don't know. And
You
that
don't
was
know.
The fear. That was the fear that my wife said, because as I told you, or maybe I didn't. I was terrified to fly. That was my first flight, and I wanted somebody to come back with me just to have somebody to
Right.
hold. I didn't want to hold a stranger's hand in case something, I got
So you have a
terrified.
deathly fear of flying?
I did.
Okay.
Not anymore. Now I'll fly anywhere. I didn't realize it was so comfortable. But I had anxiety and everything. So I was like a nervous wreck for 3 weeks before, because it took me 3 weeks to get out after the judge says you're going back, and you're going back by plane. So anyway, my point was that I asked them, can somebody get on this flight? They said, yes, it's a commercial flight. If you want somebody to come, I'll try and get you the flight number in advance and they can book a ticket. So I said to my wife, I said, can you just come back with me? She says, Doug, I don't want to take that chance.
No,
What,
Yeah,
to get
that's-
that-
what
yeah,
if I
right.
get
Yeah,
out
right.
and then I can't come back? Then everything we've got here is abandoned. My daughter would be left handling everything. So she said, I'm sorry, I really can't.
By the way, on this flight home, are you shackled or anything? Or are you
No.
just like a regular
No,
citizen?
I was you're only shackled up until you leave what do you call it? It's called the BTC, the Broward. I forget what it was. They take you there to process you before you go to the
Okay.
plane.
And you get back your clothes and all.
So you get back, yeah. You're not there. When they take you from there, you're in the shackles and the handcuffs. But when you get to the airport, ICE has its own facility. You don't go through the
Right.
regular stall and everything.
Doug, did you ever get a sense that this was some sort of Canada bashing, a political maneuver? Because, there's been a lot of tension. A lot of people aren't going to Florida, a lot of Canadians.
I would say that there were some people that probably had, good riddance. We caught a Canadian, get them out of here. But for the most part, they were all very surprised that there was a Canadian experiencing this. That was a real surprise. Oh, you're Canadian and you're here? So it was a shock to me. But like I said, there are some people that, good, get out of here. You broke the law. We don't want you. That,
Yeah, you mentioned you're in the Cubans. There
Yeah.
are Cubans.
Yeah.
in there.
Cubans, Venezuelans, mostly Latin America. And the Cubans, what we've determined from speaking to all of them, it was like in Alcatraz, it was like 80%, because they can't go back home. They can't get the relief. They pick those people up because they know they're going to be in the system for a long time. And that's money. Every day at Alcatraz, $600 a body. So the government pays out whoever runs that private facility. It's a private facility.
Right, and they're
So $600 for every person that's there, per day. So they want to keep people there just to keep the revenue running. And then when we went, Bill, but when we went to the real detention center, it dropped. They said it was about $475, $500 a person.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
You listen to the government, the American government talk, and they say, well, basically they're getting rid of hardened criminals,
Right.
illegals, like who come to the country to destroy it, to rape and pillage and steal and all the rest.
Mhm.
And you're describing a scenario where you met no one like that.
Nobody that I ran into even came close to that type of description. It's family people. They've got kids. They've been working. They were picked up at their job. And don't get me wrong, there are people that broke the law. So I'm not supporting that was good. But the way you're being treated and the way you're being held and the conditions that's not the punishment that these people should be experiencing for what they've done. That's the inhumane part about it.
Okay.
It's
So
unbelievable.
here you are back in
Yep.
Montreal. Where this whole journey started 15
Yep.
years prior. Your family is still there.
Still there, yeah.
What's next for Doug Dixon?
Trying to get things in order. I had no Medicare, obviously no driver's license. They took my driver's license, so I couldn't do a transfer. They take your green card. So I'm trying to just get my regular life started again. It's like starting from scratch.
And what about bringing your family back?
And then I'm hoping that by August of this year, my son said his lease will be up so he can leave his apartment. And then he plans to come back, and so does my wife. I'm saying that because that's our plan now. If things get delayed, I have no control over
But
it.
meanwhile, they're also established down there. Their lives are there.
Absolutely.
This has just upended
It
everything.
is. Yeah. And my daughter, who my wife lives with now, she is finding it very hard because we are a very close family. We've lived together, all our lives. We didn't all go off in different sections of the world. We sort of stuck together and lived together, and in close proximity. And now basically she's going to be no mom, no dad, and no brother. And that's hard.
And what are your plans for yourself, work-wise?
I'm trying to find something to do for work. It's, I can't go anywhere right now because I don't have any vehicle, no transportation. So I'm relying on my support system. And I can say that I have a very close family and a great group of friends that have, been behind me 150%. And you had mentioned earlier that my American hockey friends, they are totally flabbergasted by that. They cannot believe this. We did not vote for this. This is not what we wanted. We didn't want illegals in here, but the people that were illegal, we were talking the criminals, the gang members, these type of people, not the people that, got picked up by ICE because their driver's license had expired, or, they've got all kinds of reasons, and they have so much power. ICE has so much power. They exercise it.
We have to wrap up. I would just ask you, looking back on all this now,
Yep.
is this a nightmare? You can't believe it actually happened. How do you deal with this? How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm going to probably need a little bit of social assistance mentally for what's gone on, just to process, because I'm not in my 20s. I'm getting 61 next month. So it's hard. I'm not sleeping still properly. Just things are hard. And I sort of have to block certain things out, or I'll just emotionally, be destroyed. And that's it. It's not easy. It's not
A
easy.
cautionary tale to say.
Yeah.
the least. Listen, obviously, you're glad you're home.
Yep.
If we can call this home, it's used to be.
Oh, it is I'm
Yeah.
telling you, I am so proud to be Canadian that, it's, you think, oh, well, why did they ask me, why didn't you get your citizenship? And you would, trust me, I'm proud to be Canadian.
And I guess you're rooting for the Canadian team against the Florida team.
Absolutely.
Doug Dixon, thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Appreciate you coming on.
Yep.
That wraps
Thank you.
up this edition of the Corner Booth Podcast. We'll see you again soon.